Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my absolute pleasure to have as my guest Farla Efros. Efros is president of HRC Retail Advisory, former interim CEO of True Religion, and author of Fuck Cancer. After receiving an aggressive cancer diagnosis on a client call, she applied 30 years of Fortune 500 turnaround strategy to her own treatment. Now she teaches patients to bring CEO energy to the exam room through her Healing Rebel protocol. It wouldn't surprise me if you brand yourself as the Healing Rebel, Farla. Am I correct?
That is correct. That is my pseudonym, actually, which started, it's quite funny, actually. When I was diagnosed with cancer, the first thing you do is you start to, pull all your research together. And I went into Facebook groups and read a ton of stuff about cancer and found that although I learned a lot, they were still quite negative. And I started to blog in them as the Healing Rebel. And I got such a response. It was incredible. The people that were responding and positive and felt that, they would write back to me saying they get up every morning and as they're drinking their coffee, they're looking forward to reading one of my Healing Rebel blogs. So it was very inspiring to me.
Well, and I think when we are faced with a terminal diagnosis, we can throw conventional wisdom out the window. We have to, I think, take some unique and creative strategies to be, I think, the CEO of our own health. And I think a lot of times we turn over too much power to the healthcare system.
Yeah, and I think that what happens is the healthcare system, candidly, is so inundated. So it's so broken. And I talk a lot about this, whether you're in the US or Canada. And I think COVID was just a great example of the repairs that are so needed in our healthcare system because doctors are so inundated. And so if you don't advocate for yourself, then you're not getting the best healthcare.
And this goes to one of your signature topics, by the way. As long as we're on this tact, I got to ask you this. Why is it difficult for patients to feel empowered enough to challenge the quote unquote standard of care?
I think it's fear. And I think it's as simple as that. I think you're so fearful when you get diagnosed, something goes through your body and it's such a shock. And so I think you are just running on, in a sense, kind of adrenaline. And whatever the doctors are telling you, you're trying to understand it, but as you're trying to understand what they're telling you, you're also trying to accept that you have cancer. And it's the first time ever that for me, I went, oh my God, I can actually die. And the level of stress and anxiety that comes into your body, I think that you just are so shocked that you just listen to whatever the doctors say. And it's hard for you to challenge because it's hard for you to step away from yourself.
And, I think the other thing, Farla, it's also the way doctors present information to patients and families.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they present so much information all at once that families don't have an opportunity to digest it, and the patient doesn't have an opportunity to adequately digest it. Because when you hear the term cancer, there's only two things that come into your head. I think either you're going to live or you're going to die. There's no exactly, well, I may survive. It's either life or death. We're thinking of the extremes. And so I think it's important for doctors and medical professionals to spoon feed information a little bit at a time, let that sink in, allow for questions as they come up, not at the end of the conversation when people are just inundated with information and, like you said, are in shock mode. And, give that information time to digest, answer questions as they go along, and simply focus on building a relationship with the patient and family as opposed to giving diagnostic information and simply walking away and treating the patient as if they are a patient.
Yeah, and I think that's why I developed this healing rebel protocol, because I saw exactly what you're describing. Because I went into these I didn't even call them appointments, by the way. I actually called them meetings. But I went into these meetings and I had very clear agendas and very clear objectives. And so I handed that out to the doctors versus them, in a sense, kind of running the meeting. I ran the meeting and I sat there and I said, here are my very clear objectives, and here's my agenda for the day. And we're going to go through all of my questions and we're going to take the time, and either I'm going to record the answers or I'm going to write them down, whichever you prefer. But I want to make sure that I'm truly understanding, what I have and what my options are. And that is the most important thing, because doctors come in and they just spit it all out at you, and you have no idea if you have any options or not. And it's because they have no time, because they're running 2 to 3 hours behind and they have to get off to the next patient. And so that's why it's so important that we gather the information and we come in prepared, because the reality is it's about us. And if you take that mentality that it's about you, then you're going to do everything you can to ensure that you get the best and the most effective medicine for your disease, regardless if it's cancer or not, to be honest.
So the Healing Rebel protocol, if I'm hearing this correctly, involves patients empowering themselves to take charge of their care,
Correct.
doing some research and saying, here are the treatments and the protocol that I am willing to accept for now. And this is what I see as being relevant to me. How can you, as my physician, facilitate making that happen?
Exactly. And that's what I went in with. My first meeting, and throughout my meeting, after you get that phone call that you get the diagnosis and then you go into my first meeting, I had about 36 to 40 questions. Now, I've shrunk it down for the protocol because that's too many, but I sat there for hours going through each and every question that I had. And then I let the doctor talk about, what she thought my treatment plan would look like. But candidly, I kind of knew what it would look like before she even mentioned it. But I wanted to have I wanted to have a bit of ownership, and I wanted to feel like I had a bit of control. Because when you get diagnosed with cancer, the first thing that you realize is that you actually have no control.
Yep.
Your body has done something to you and taken away your control. And so you're grappling and trying to get back control. So for me, building the very clear objectives and the agendas and having a very clear plan made me feel that at least I had a teeny tiny bit of control.
Can I ask what type of cancer you were diagnosed with?
Sure, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was stage 2B invasive ductal carcinoma. I was triple positive, so progesterone positive, estrogen positive, and HER2 positive.
So basically, your prognosis was kind of not so good, or am I?
So the prognosis actually is quite good. And I would say that because the medications they had 15 years ago, if they didn't have it 15 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you today. When you're HER2 positive, that used to be a death sentence. Today, with the drug called Herceptin, it really does change the game. So I had they call my cancer aggressive. It was aggressive. I found it early, thank God. The mammogram did not find it, by the way. So just for your listeners and viewers, the mammogram only picks up about 70%. It was the MRI that actually picked it up, but it was still considered, aggressive, and because of the HER2. And so that was the impetus for me to have a very aggressive treatment plan, because it started for me with the one clear objective. I don't want to die. So if I don't want to die, I'm now going to do everything that's aggressive as possible to ensure that I don't at this point.
Yeah, it makes sense. Have you found, I think, in your subsequent research or discussion with other patients that have with cancer, have you found that the more control that they can assume and the more empowerment that they feel over their treatment plan, does that increase survival rate outcomes?
It does actually, because it's putting positivity into your treatment plan because you're actually controlling it. So you're actually making decisions and you're taking the path of, I'm not going to die. Right. And so you're putting all your energy in, which is actually positive energy. And that actually does help your outcome.
And I've talked to some other individuals who have survived cancer that said attitude means everything in terms of improving quality of life, increasing the chances for being a cancer survivor, your ability to resist what traditional medicine is telling you and take control of your own actions and have a positive attitude actually either extends quality of life or facilitates total survival from cancer.
Yeah. And throughout throughout this journey, which is not even over yet, I was extremely positive. I'm not going to tell you that I didn't cry in my shower because I did quite a bit of that, but I had to remain positive. And I think the second thing that really helped me was not only the positive attitude, but it was also the exercise. So traditionally, they will tell you lay low on the exercise, don't do the exercise. And I said, interesting. I appreciate that, but I'm going to do what I want to do. And that goes back to that notion of control.
Yeah.
And so I still continued my exercise. Did we vary it? Of course, I varied it because I would walk in completely out of it because I had unbelievable brain fog. Yes, we varied it, but at the end of the day, I never stopped. So throughout all my chemo treatment and all of my surgeries, exercise was so critically important to me. And I think that actually even helped with the symptoms from having to do chemo and the like.
I've had people I love who have died from cancer, who have survived cancer, have gone through the chemotherapy, and they've told me the chemo sometimes is worse than the cancer because the side effects are just so brutal. And I think anything you can do to counteract that, some healthy, maybe non-medical means to counteract that, I think is extremely important because the time after leading up to the next chemo treatment can tend to be pretty challenging.
It is because you're on a hamster wheel, right? You do chemo. I did mine every 3 weeks. And just as you're starting to feel better, boom, you're doing it again. And so the exercise really, for me, allowed me to bypass some of the symptoms.
Mm.
So they would go away faster because I was exercising and getting all the endorphins and the blood running through my body. And they were very concerned, the doctors, with all of my exercise. So I would go in every time I'd have an appointment, I would go in with a list of all my symptoms and all the exercise that I did. And then I would say, here's the 5 or 4 things that we need to solve for. And they would look at the exercise and they would just shake their heads. And I said, look, it's good for me. And that's about owning your own body, right? So I know what's good for me. And I appreciate statistics may say you shouldn't exercise or whatever it might be, but I always exercised. So I wasn't doing anything different. I was just continuing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to keep doing the things that you were doing before, but maybe not take on anything additionally new because of your change in circumstances. But
Yeah.
what specific skills, other than coming up with 36 to 40 questions and really just analyzing
Yeah.
everything from the perspective of your diagnosis, what are some other skills that you had as a CEO that you utilized that was helpful for you on your cancer journey?
I think it was being able to look outside myself. So I became the CEO of a company that I never wanted to run before.
Mm.
And that was my own life, right? So everything changed, right? And oddly enough, my business background really helped me because it allowed me to get very clear, build a plan, build my executive board team, right? So if there were times that I couldn't advocate for myself, I had somebody there, right? I had a sub, I would say. And my executive board team was filled with my naturopathic doctor, because that was important to me, and filled with all the different doctors and all the different exercise people I went to, including a chiropractor and the like. And so I really had a very great broad perspective so that my healthcare was not just only me involved, but it was a much broader executive team to ensure that, again, I was going to get the best support and the best results that I can get.
Well, what I like about the team that you built, it's very diverse. It just wasn't based on Western medicine philosophy. You had naturopaths, you had holistic practitioners. It was very much an integrative approach
Yeah.
between evidentiary-based practices and practices that are maybe not considered to be evidentiary-based, but the science is proving more and more that they are. So you integrated a variety of different perspectives, and really, when we talk about holistic health, you modeled that in terms of how you built your team.
I did. And so I thought, I really thought, Dave, that I was a healthy eater. I really did. My whole life, I didn't have that much sugar. I didn't have that much carbs. I didn't have that much dairy. I really thought I ate healthy until I went to the naturopathic doctor. And when you have cancer and when you go through surgeries and when you're full of medication, the one thing that is so important is to reduce your inflammation, because inflammation causes so many other problems within your body, as you know. So I went on she had suggested that I try this autoimmune protocol, and it was eliminating a lot of different foods that I was eating before, only for me to realize that as healthy as I thought I was eating, I actually wasn't eating as healthy. I moved down this autoimmune protocol, and it's nothing that you haven't heard of before. It's just eliminating different foods and then adding them back in and seeing how you react. And I started to feel so much better. The clarity in my brain from the brain fog, the reduction in the inflammation. I went for a blood test and I couldn't believe the results. And that's why, yes, Western medicine is really important, and I'm a huge proponent of it, but you've really got to add in the naturopathic element to it, because it's so important, because there could be vitamins and minerals that you're actually missing in your body as well. And you learn more about what are some of the cancer causing agents that you just aren't aware of.
Yeah, particularly bouts of inflammation and chronic inflammation are associated with particular types of cancer.
Okay.
And so it's important to be able to control that. And I agree. I'm a proponent for Western medicine, but what Western medicine can address, holistic therapies and alternative therapies can. And together, it's a package that I think ensures that individuals are going to achieve optimal health. And if they continue to follow the protocol
Yeah.
and follow the regimen, stay there.
Well, and I think the other thing too, it then also provides you with options,
Yep.
right? Because the Western medicine is, and it's very common, forget about the chemo side of it, but Western medicine, when you go to them and you say, I have chronic pain or I have chronic fatigue, right? Right away, they go to big pharma and start prescribing things, which for some people, that's a great path, right? But for others, there's other options that you can try and see if in fact those help you, so that you don't have to keep putting medication in your body that's going to have an impact on your liver or your pancreas or other body parts. So I just think that it provides you those options that you might have not otherwise had.
And if you look at the side effect profiles of most medications, the side effects seem to outweigh the therapeutic benefit of the medication itself.
Well, the side effects are like this, right? If you look at the medications that they're even prescribing to you, they're really not medications specifically for cancer. They're medications for that they've found over time work on other, they're not specific to your need, right? So, oh, I have tons of bone pain. Okay, well, we're going to put you on an antidepressant. So but that's not my issue. I have bone pain. Well, we have learned that if we put you on, an antidepressant, it can help your bone pain. So these are not drugs that are specific to some of your needs. So again, it doesn't mean that you can't go on the drugs. It just means that you have different options.
Yep. And I like that. And I think our society's become so conscious in terms of prescribing medication for just about everything. If you take a look at commercials on TV, every other commercial seems to be for a new medication.
Yeah,
And I think there's a place for medication, but I also think it can be overused. And I think there's a place for other options other than medication or in
yeah,
addition to.
agree. I completely agree. And that's how I set up my executive board team. And to be clear, whatever my naturopath said or suggested, I did check with my cancer pharmacist because I wanted to understand the risks and then make that decision to decide if I wanted to do something or not. So I wasn't being a bit Machiavellian and going, I'm just going to go crazy, but I actually did check all the time and then I made that decision. So again, I look at it as options.
Yep. We talked about this prior to recording. Why isn't hope a strategy when you're dealing with cancer? I like that piece that you came up with because it dovetails off of the late Navy SEAL Commander Richard Marcinko, who said in one of his books, "Hope is not a method." So when I saw that, I had to address that with you.
I think this goes back about advocating and taking control, right? You can't sit there and get your diagnosis and I'm going to hope that it's going to all go well. I'm going to hope, right? And put your hands into the hands of the doctor. And I'm saying, no, that's not a strategy. You want to make sure it's not about hoping, it's about building the right strategy so that you can get on the other side of this because you can get on the other side of this. And it's really about what you do to do that.
Yeah. And it's really about taking action.
Yeah.
You can state an intention that this is what you want to have happen, but
Yeah.
if the behavior doesn't follow the intention remains an intention, the intention remains hope that's unfulfilled.
Exactly. I mean,
So,
if you had attended any of the meetings I had with the doctors, they were wild. And I say that because imagine, just envision this woman walking in with no hair on her head, probably wearing, I think at that point I was just wearing a baseball cap, carrying an expensive bag, pulling out my binder, and then handing everything out with pens and highlighters and going through it. It was wild. And at the same time, building a relationship with them because that was most important. That it was not, I did not want to have a transactional relationship with them. I wanted to have a strategic relationship with them. And by doing that, that was really about getting to know them and understanding who they are, asking questions about them. Before you know it, we have a nice relationship and they're showing me pictures of their children and the like. And then I'm asking them for things that are not really the norm. And they're saying, okay,
yeah, if you take the transaction out of relationships and just focus on building a relationship that's based on trust, genuineness, give and take, listening, equal doses of listening and sharing, you're going to build long lasting relationships and you're going to get that kind of personal investment from your
yeah,
patients. You're going to get to know them personally as well as medically. And that's important because what comes out personally, you can help them, especially with their strengths, you can help them utilize those strengths to deal with their illness.
exactly. Exactly.
You use a lot of snark as far as your work with individuals. So, I mean, I think it's great because you're snarky, and I'm going to say that with all the respect in the world. So, why is snark sometimes better than just your traditional approaches to dealing with any type of challenge?
It's a defense mechanism and it's fun and it makes people laugh. And I don't want to be defined by cancer. I've done so much more in my life. So I laugh about it. I mean, what can I do? Right? At the end of the day, you get that diagnosis and I can't wish it away because it's not going anywhere. And so I'm just snarky about it. And what that does with people actually, it gets them more comfortable. And that's what I do. And I laugh about it all the time. and you have to laugh and you have to be snarky and you have to say, fuck off. And you're allowed to scream and get angry. But that's how you get through this. Because the truth is, I am still in denial. Imagine, right? I lost all my hair. I lost tons of body parts. And I'm still in denial that this happened, right? Because how could it happen to somebody like me? I eat well, I exercise, I do everything great. Yeah, I know I have shitty DNA, but have any markers? But it happened and it can happen to anyone. And it sucks. It really does.
We lose somebody close to us that we love, or we go through a life-altering illness. We ask her, we do the what ifs and the why me's. Why did this happen to me? I eat right. I exercise right. I go to church on Sundays. Whatever you want to throw out there,
Okay.
it's like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
Well, if I had the answer to that, Farla, for any of these existential questions, I'd be a rich man.
I know.
And
I'm sure if you and I went for a walk in the woods, because I love hiking, we would solve all the world's problems.
Mhm.
But the truth is you do. I did a what if as well, but I kind of turned it around and I said, you know what? Cancer is actually my strength. It's not my weakness. And maybe I got it because it was time for me to take a little breather and stop and smell the roses. And maybe I got it because somebody knew I was going to be able to fight it. Who knows?
and maybe somebody knew that you would be able to take that fight and translate it into helping other patients
Yeah,
fight their good fight, with
exactly.
their own cancer diagnosis.
Exactly.
And it's typically challenge that I think elevates us to find our greater purpose, even though at the time we can't see that because we're right in the middle of trying to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and you're in a shock. And for me personally, I had just buried my sister to cancer. So I really, somewhere in my mind, I believed she got it. So likely I was going to be saved. Why would you have it in, two sisters,
Yeah.
right? That's how your mind works, right? I mean, my mom had cancer too, as well, and she ended up passing during, my treatment from cancer as well, because it went from her breast, lung to her brain. Prior to my diagnosis, I was taking care of my sister who was dying from cancer and watched her suffer for 2 years in the middle of COVID. So I really did feel that in a sense, kind of, I was absolved. And then I got diagnosed and it was one of those, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Fucking kidding me? Like, I just buried my sister. Are you kidding me? And I went on this complete journey of, I don't want to die. I'm not ready. So I'm not going to. So I'm going to fight like I've never fought before. And this became my singular focus. This is all I did every day. And I'm still doing it today.
You need to, because if you're a cancer survivor for 5 years, that's kind of the measuring stick that they use for, or is
And
that different? Is it 10 now?
it's 10. So right now, I'm considered to be no evidence of disease. And that will be for 10 years, which means I'm not out of the woods yet. In 10 years, I will be, in a sense, officially considered remission. But it's hard. It's really hard because every time you get a pain or an ache or anything, you're in your mind, you're like, it's back.
Well, particularly with your history of your mother dying of cancer and your sister dying of cancer and you being the caregiver for her. I would think any type of pain gets magnified because of the past experience of loss that you've had.
Yes.
And my condolences for both of your losses of your mom and your sister.
Thank you.
Um, One of the things that, and I always say this to anybody who's ever lost a sibling grief does not get acknowledged as much as it should. And I just want to take the time to acknowledge that relationship that you had with your sister. And because a lot of times, if the parents are still alive, everybody's worried about the parents. And the siblings are expected to do good for the parents. And it's like the sibling looks and says, well, what the fuck about me, And, what about my relationship? What about the relationship that I shared? And, it needs to get acknowledged more and more. And I really make every effort to do that with anybody who's ever lost a sibling because it doesn't get honored enough.
I appreciate that. And I agree with you. Because you lose, you're part of a pack.
Mm.
And like we lost, like my brother and I lost our leader. So it's really unfortunate and it's very hard. It's very hard to watch your parents because I don't believe parents should ever have to bury a child.
No.
So I am in my mind, I'm all about, the order of operations, I would say, and that's not in the right order. And then you worry about yourselves.
Yep. Yep. And but you've used everything that's happened and you've channeled it or reframed it and you've rechanneled it and you've repurposed it into to helping others. And I say this on every podcast that I've been on. I wish we could find different types of challenges that can help us find our greater purpose other than what you went through and what I've
Yeah.
gone through and what everybody I've had on this show has gone through. But, we can't pick and choose the challenges that come across our path.
No, I mean, I think that I say this all the time, don't wait for a crisis to realize your own strength.
Yep.
Right? But easy to say, harder to do when you're in the middle of like living your life and all the other things that are happening at the same time. But this really does make you stop and reflect. And for me, it gave me an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm done doing what I did before. My greater purpose is something very different.
Have you noticed any other differences in you now as far as your priorities and values as a cancer survivor before you got diagnosed? Has there been any shift for you?
100%. I am so much more present. So I traveled for 30 years, pretty much 4 to 5 days a week, multiple cities, multiple countries, and had a baby in there somewhere. So I was always there, but I wasn't present. And what I mean by that, I would be at everything that my daughter did. Everything. I would show up, I'd fly in, I'd be the mom with rolling the suitcase behind her. I also had an AirPod or some kind of something in my ear. So I would be always on my phone doing stuff at the same time. So I would say that is probably the number one thing. And I think the other piece is really just being very intentional and intentional in what I do and what I say. I think the third is I just let a lot go. Some things are just not important to get upset about. And I really let so much go today. It's unbelievable. The things that would upset me before, now I laugh about them.
And it changes our perspective. And I've always said, I've heard people say, well, boy, your journey puts things in perspective. And I'm thinking, it's not good enough to be put into perspective. Let it change your perspective. Learn from what I've gone through with my own challenges or what Farla's gone through with her own challenges, and let that shift your perspective, not put it in perspective.
Correct. And that's what it did for me. And I think today I like myself better, which is interesting. Not that I didn't like myself before, but again, I think it's because I'm more intentional.
Yeah. I think you're pretty upfront with who you are. I mean, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. What you see is what you get. And if you don't like it, well, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Right? I agree with you. And that's how I am today. It's like some days I walk into a room like, hey, I'm Farla, I have cancer. I walk into a room and just say I'm Farla. It really depends. And I don't care. That's the difference. I actually don't care.
Well, that's a hell of an icebreaker, too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Ask me whatever you want. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. This is a long time ago. I used to be an addictions counselor, what seems to be like a past lifetime ago. And really, that's not kind of the go-to occupation if you're at a party where alcohol's being served. So I was
Yeah.
at a party at my next door neighbor's house, and this guy, CEO type, comes walking up to me, tries to carry conversation, and I had a drink in my hand. I would drink occasionally, parties and stuff like this. I had a drink in my hand, and so I asked him. I said, "So what do you do for a living?" And he told me, he goes, he's some high-tech CEO. He goes, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm an addictions counselor." And he went, he I said, and I never got invited back, and I couldn't figure out why.
Well, don't worry. People don't really want to invite me to cocktail parties either. I could
No,
talk
but
I could talk about retail all day long. It's quite boring.
but if you came in for my party and said, "Hi, I'm Farrell and I have cancer," you could stay. I'd sit and talk to you because I'm thinking, hey, that's pretty
Or
cool. You could come out and say, "This is me."
everybody else would run away from me thinking they'd catch it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like people think that when you talk about death, you're going to die. And I make sure I tell them, well, talking about death isn't going to make you dead.
Yeah, exactly. So during my journey, I lost my mom, and then 6 months later, I lost my dad to Alzheimer's, which was a terrible disease. But my point is, I will say to people when I go back to my hometown and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go have a picnic with my parents and sister. People are mortified that I say that. I'm like, but it's the truth, right? I'm going to go see them. I'm going to have a picnic. And I laugh about things like that. And I take selfies at the grave, in front of the graves. And I send it off to people because I don't care.
Well, and the other thing too, we get through grief through remembering. We don't get through grief through forgetting.
Yeah.
And, we maintain the bond with our loved ones, regardless of where they are. I mean, their physical remains are in the cemetery. So that's where you're going to go. And that's where you're going to take a selfie because that's where the last physical place you remember your loved ones being. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's one family that brought their father's ashes everywhere with them. They went to dinner, they set up a chair for him, and they they asked me, "Do you think there's anything wrong with that?" I said, "Look, there's a hundred different ways to grieve. It's beautiful." I said, if this is what's going to help you get through grief, who the hell cares what anybody else thinks?"
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's awesome.
So,
That's a fun couple to have at a cocktail party.
oh, they'd be the first on my invitation list, Farla.
Oh my God, it would be the island of misfit toys.
Yeah.
That's what would be at your cocktail party.
Oh, and I'd love it. I just sit there saying, that's pretty cool.
I
I got all these interesting, different-minded individuals, and that's what makes the world go round.
I know. I love it. It's so fun.
It is. Got to get to your book, Fuck
Okay.
Cancer.
Yes.
I love the title.
Thank you.
Um, so tell us about the book, Fuck Cancer. What is it about? What do you want readers to take away from it?
I want readers to take away that I'm providing them a protocol. So I'm actually handing to them what I did during my cancer journey. So I'm giving them a plan, and so that they can learn. And if they can't do it, they can get someone to possibly take over. And because I really want people to advocate for themselves, because I don't think today we're not advocating properly. I think what's happening is there are missed opportunities for people to not die. And I also want them to be heard, right? Because even when everyone has, there's I'm going to call it the typical reactions that you may have to chemo or other drugs. But sometimes you have some unique things, and it's really important that you're heard. And so that's really the basis of my book. The book also peppers in my story, throughout, because frankly, given the fact that, I had lost my sister, that I lost my mom, I lost my dad, I was going through chemo and all of that. Really, if I would have taken the woe is me path, I don't think anybody would have said, you can't do it. But I didn't. And I want to show people that even when there's a dark cloud over your head, and let me tell you, there was a dark cloud over my head. And I was going back and forth in between chemo, trying to visit with parents that didn't live in the same province or city as me. And I did it. And it was hard and it sucked. And there was miserable days, but you can do it. And I think if you put your mind to it, and again, you get clear on that one fact, I don't want to die, I believe that you can do it.
Yeah, basically, it just wasn't a cloud. You had a whole cloud cover of black clouds that were just following you. And you could have packed it in, but it's a testament to the human spirit and your own resilience and your desire to and your determination that you're here and that you're helping others. And I think that's great.
Yeah, and don't think I didn't think about packing it in,
Mhm.
because it was just a horror show. That's what it felt like. I was hoping that there would be some director somewhere that would call cut. And this was all a dream, and this was just part of some Netflix documentary about some crazy consultant that, got sick and had to do all these things at the same time. Um, that's what I was hoping for.
Well, you're talking about losing a majority of your family. You're talking about both of your parents and your sister.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, where exactly. And when different milestones that I was reaching, and I talk about it in my book, so you finish chemo and that's a milestone. Well, I was eulogizing my mother instead of having a milestone. And then when I finished the Herceptin, I was eulogizing my father. So I never really ever had time to process anything because I was literally on this hamster wheel of hell. And despite that, I found a rainbow.
yeah, and you also bring up another good point too, in terms of, I've always said the grief process is not linear, it's certainly circular. But when you take a look at death due to terminal illness, cancer, Alzheimer's, you grieve actual dates. Like for cancer, you may grieve, you might remember the day that you went to remission, but then if the person dies, they remember the day that the cancer came back. And then they remember the day that they went into active dying. All of those dates have just as much significance in the grief process and, really unleash the intensity of grief as much as the normal milestone dates, such as birthdays and death dates. So, and that also has to be, I think, remembered as well and honored as well, too.
I agree.
I've got a question that's totally unrelated to anything that we've talked about,
Okay.
but I think you can handle this one.
All right, let's go.
All right. So I'm going to ask you if you could construct the perfect day for yourself, not for anybody else, but for yourself, what would that perfect day look like?
All right. Do you want times? Do you want breaking it up in different sections?
This is your perfect day, so you could do whatever you choose to
All
do
right.
with it.
So my perfect day, as I wake up in the morning, there's a coffee sitting next to my bed. And as I'm sipping my coffee, I'm just, exactly. I'm just trying to get my body to get out of bed. And then I'm going to go for a hike, a really challenging hike. After my hike, I'm going to grab coffee or lunch with friends. And then I'm going to go for a massage. And then I'm going to go out for dinner with friends and have a couple of drinks and just laugh our asses off and remember the 80s because the 80s were the best. So that would be my perfect day.
I like it. In the 80s, they had the rock bands, they had the hair bands, like Def Leppard. I remember all of them,
Totally.
Poison.
Oh my God, absolutely. The 80s were the best. And when I get together with my friends, that's what we talk about. And we love the 80s and we listen to 80s music and we just laugh about all those stupid things we did.
Yeah, in the 80s were a lot about that, but it was a fun time in the 80s.
Exactly. It was a great time.
We could do things now that we would get questioned on our political correctness for today.
That or arrested, yes.
Yeah. Or canceled, either one of those as well too. So you've left our audience, I think, with so much good stuff today about your own journey, what you do to help others, tips, strategies for individuals to take charge of their own health care. But I'm going to ask you if you want our audience to remember just one thing from our conversation today, what would that be?
Resilient. That's your North Star. I think that's the most important piece.
I like it. How do you define resilience for yourself?
For me, I think it's looking at my family and knowing they're so important to me. Watching my daughter grow, she's 24. She'll be a doctor, and I'm just not ready to go. And I want to help others.
I like that definition. For me, I'm going to quote the late great drummer for the Canadian band Rush, Neil Peart, who said, "We're only immortal for a period of time." And I realize that. But I'm not afraid of death, but I'm not ready to go yet. I think I want to be able to do some more good on this earth. And then when the good Lord wants me, when he thinks I'm done, then he can have me. And I do have a list of questions for him too. So,
Oh, me too. I want a celebration of life when I go, not a funeral. I want people to get up and talk about the good,
yep.
but the real good, right? So not the typical, she was a great person, but let me tell you what she's done, right? She's helped people, she's supported people, she's gotten Congress to listen to something, whatever it might be. That's what I want people to remember me by. Not a cancer survivor, a thriver.
Yeah. I want people to have a celebration of life in mind too. I don't want them to be sad. I just want them to remember the good memories that we had and the good times, and hopefully that I made an impact somewhere. So,
The world is so big, so I realize we can only make little tiny impacts, but that's okay, right? To me, cancer was like my sliding door, and now it's time for me to make an impact. And I find it really exciting and fun. And I think the difference between you and I is I'm actually very scared to die, very scared. And that's okay.
yeah. And because if we bring death into the equation, whether we know it's going to happen or whether we still fear it, we're going to use that knowledge to live an impactful life. And that's all we can do.
Exactly.
I'm going to kind of leave you with this thought. This is from one of my favorite books on the afterlife, if not my favorite book on the Afterlife of Billy Fingers. And in that book, Billy says, death is just birth in reverse. And I always remember that when even a modicum of fear of dying comes into my head, realizing that perhaps what we're going to go to is a different life. Our existence is going to go on, but maybe just in different form, in a different dimension. So I keep that close to my heart whenever I start thinking, I'm getting to the end state, the latter part of my life, when I just start thinking, well, we're going to go on. Maybe in a different form, but we're going to go on. So that's what kind of keeps me grounded. Boy, I could talk to you for about another hour. I think if I haven't scared you away, I might have to ask you to do a part two if you're up to it. So,
Totally.
so, so, um, but my last question for you is if people want to get in touch with you, purchase Fuck Cancer and find out anything else that's going on in your life, what's the best way for them to do that, Farla?
They can buy it on amazon.com.ca. They can go to my website, www.farlaefros.com, and they can find it there as well. On my website, it's also a lot of blogs and so forth, so they can kind of see also how the book started to come together.
And I will make sure all of your contact information gets in the episode notes before we go live. And before we sign off, I have to give a really hearty thanks to Candace Snyder for connecting us. Candace is the host of a great podcast, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities, and she's been very supportive of my podcast, and she has sent me some great guest contributors, and you are definitely one of those. And I just had such a blast talking with you today. You are genuine, you're effusive. What you see is what you get. And I like those are qualities I admire in people. So thank you for trusting me enough to spend some time with me on my platform and sharing your story. And sincerely, I hope we can do this again, Farla.
I would love it. I've had a great time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.